And good morning, everyone. Today is the 4th of June, 2019. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome to the Potter Expositor. Yes, this one's about the deep state and the intelligence community refuses to stop, and that would also include, of course, the shadow government that's run by Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett and that whole group. And I want to open up today with I got a message. I just saw it on my Twitter DM. And again, all you folks that send me these things, thank you so much. It actually is very nice getting the information. If I don't get back to you, just understand it's because, it's just better not for me to do that. But I do appreciate the information. So I checked this out, and what happened was there was it was a post on Twitter by Hillary Clinton. Supposedly, it was her account, but the actual screenshot of it had been altered, and it shows Hillary Clinton and she says this is grotesque, and she has all the people on the basically like myself and Alex Jones and anyway all of the conservatives on there. I think there are like maybe 30 of them on this thing, and I was listed in the lower right or lower left-hand corner. But just so you know, she didn't actually do that. That was somebody else that had put that on there. But when I went back to look at what the original was, it was on the 20th of May. It had a picture of the Navy SEAL, one of the military guys that Trump has pardoned, who had been accused of war crimes, etc. And her heading with this picture of the SEAL was "This is grotesque," talking about, and she has a little write up there about how horrible it is that President Trump is pardoning these people. And that's really the point of this broadcast today. That, I think, beyond most anything else that I have seen, shows you that these people, Hillary Clinton, Obama, the deep state, the really bad people in the deep state and the IC, they have no conscience. Their consciences have been seared to where they do not have an understanding, not because they don't want to, but because they chose to. They don't care what's right and wrong. They're Machiavellian 100%. They usually won't do what's right. Now, I don't know how you feel about the war crimes that these soldiers, etc., have been accused of and all of that. I was a military police officer. If I saw a war crime, I'd arrest a guy for it, okay? Just plain and simple. I don't care what rank you are. But that's not the issue here, okay? So I don't want to get in an argument about whether that's right or wrong, that Trump pardoned them. First of all, people like Hillary Clinton have put our people in bad situations that call for decisions that aren't always good. And there's a difference between responding to an attack or an expected attack and just going out and slaughtering people. But that's not really the issue here. What the issue is, I want to get onto, is Hillary Clinton says what Trump did by pardoning these guys is grotesque. What about Libya? What about Syria? What about all of the other things? And it's still to be, proven about this whole thing. I mean, there's kind of some proof there with the Haiti deal with the kids that were being trafficked out of there by Hillary's accomplice, her subordinate. But regardless, all of these things that they do, and they want to point at this as being grotesque, that President Trump has pardoned these people. Ladies and gentlemen, this shows you, probably better than anything else, that there is no dealing with these people. There is no crossing the gorge and shaking hands. And that gorge, that chasm, is going to forever widen. It will never, ever be bridged. We have enemies that are mortal enemies to us. Who's us? Well, everybody's on a different level. And I don't want to spend a lot of time philosophizing, but at the same time, I think it's important that you understand that the scripture says we're not just fighting against flesh and blood, we're fighting against spirits, principalities, powers. And this thing with Hillary proves it. It also proves it when you see that with all of the evidence that's coming out about this coup that happened against President Trump and the American Republic, the 70 million, let's say, people that voted for Trump that they're trying to disenfranchise, it shows you that with all of this evidence coming out, they will not give in. The closest anyone has come to it was Brennan saying, well, maybe I got some bad information. The CIA director saying that, and you all know this. The point here is that it's very obvious that these people have no intention of stopping or repenting. I brought this up the other day, and I'm just going to say it again. They are not going to stop. They are not. And they are marshaling their forces. And I've talked about that before. They are not going to go down without burning everything with them. So we have to be ready for that. So I wanted to open up with that, and along those same lines, let me quote you a couple things here. If you are not following Colonel Kurt Schlichter, you probably ought to do that. He's on Twitter if you have Twitter. He's pretty straightforward, no nonsense, and I follow him, and I like the things that he says. So here's one, and this is not calling for violence, but you have to understand what these people are up to. Trump is moving ahead, of course, as we all know, with the antitrust deal. Barr is looking at this entire investigation that started and how it started against Trump and against us, and he's finding many disturbing things. I'm going to play a little deal here. Well, I won't play it. I'll just read it. But Barr is gaining more, and there's still problems. I realize that. He did say the other day that he wants to save. He actually, and I said this, I predicted it, that his concern is saving the institutions of the DOJ and the FBI. Well, just the fact that he says that he wants to do that doesn't surprise me. But it's basically an admission that they're broken, and they're broken badly. As I have been saying, and a lot of other people have been saying for a long time. So Barr, I think, is going to go down the right path. No one's perfect. I'm not saying that all of his past can be forgotten. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we better just move on in the future here and get this done. And if Trump has to use the military to support Barr in his efforts, so be it. Is that martial law? Not really. Not when it's being done against insurrections inside the federal government itself. But that whole thing can spill out and cause some other problems. Durham and Barr doing all this work. Huber's gone, and I told you that was going to be the case. They might be, one or two out of maybe a dozen people in the DOJ that can be trusted. Now, there might be more. I don't know. Barr apparently brought some people with him. I don't know how they would get prosecutorial power, all that. I don't think they can. I don't know how that'll work. But I don't know who the soldiers are going to be that they use. I'm concerned about the upper command structure of the military. I don't trust them, and you all know that. Well, let me read this thing. So taking all that into consideration, let me read this thing from Kurt Schlichter. Again, not calling for offensive action, okay, but just a reminder. As a matter of fact, I went over to my sheriff's office the other day, and I had a talk with them about this. And they're on our side, that my sheriff's office is. And we had a real good discussion about what the problems are, what we can expect. And I told him, I said, if things get out of control, it's kind of unlikely up here, but if things get out of control, you can call on me, and I'd be happy to be there. And so they know about that. And I suggest you do the same thing. I've told you to do that anyway. We had a change in sheriff, so I wanted to make sure that things are still under control there. So let me read Kurt Schlichter here, what he says. He sees all of this too. And I think this is very well put. He says, gun control was never about stopping crime. Gun control is about stopping you from having the power to resist leftist tyranny. And that's absolutely true. That's why I've constantly said that anyone who infringes upon the Bill of Rights as a whole, but particularly the First and Second Amendments, is an enemy of the people, and there should be a statute put into place where if an elected official or bureaucrat in an official position takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and then turns around and tries to subvert it, they should be arrested based on that. That needs to happen. Will we ever get that law? Well, it's kind of already there under the Insurrection Act. It can be used, but of course that's a dangerous thing to open up. But like I said, we're probably at that point. Anyway, Kurt Schlichter ends this by saying, buy guns and ammo. So let me read that whole thing again. Gun control was never about stopping crime. Gun control is about stopping you from having the power to resist leftist tyranny, and history proves it. Buy guns and ammo. I really like that. That was excellent, and he's always along those lines. Colonel Manus is also very much like that, if you know who that is. So I wanted to bring that up, and since we're talking a little bit about Barr and Huber, Barr actually mentioned that Huber's responsibilities, like I told you a few months back, when Barr got in there and asked Huber for product, he didn't have anything. He was basically, as some people have called it, Joe DeGeneva for one, a head fake by Sessions and by that group. And I called that as soon as Huber was announced, because I understand how Utah works, and I understand Huber. Like I said, I worked with him. I know, not that he's a bad guy, but he's going to do what he's told. He's a lightweight. He's not like a John Durham, not in any way, shape, or form. So Barr has said that he's basically, moved aside, and that Durham's taking all of his stuff on now. He apparently did some things after Barr said he wanted some work product, and I told you about that. He kind of kicked him in the butt, but it was also obvious that he had not done enough to enable Barr to move forward quickly, relatively. So Huber's basically out, and he was actually never in. Okay, so anyway, there's an article. It's on the AmericanThinker.com on the web, and you can go look at that. And it's by a writer by the name of Daniel, and I'll probably butcher this name, Sobieski is what it looks like. Daniel Sobieski. And the name of the article, well, that's not as important. You can go and look up John Sobieski on there and see what the article is. But I just want to read his ending statement, because Huber lost evidence that people had sent him. If you remember, there were a group of independent investigators that testified before Congress, and that they had sent this investigation information to Huber, and he lost it 3 times. Well, how do you lose evidence? Well, they didn't want to talk about it. And I've already covered all that, but let me read this. So he's addressing Huber losing this evidence 3 times. Let me read this to you. It's the ending statement. When you keep losing evidence providing documentation for Hillary's crimes and sit on an investigation of FISA abuses involving your boss, Rod Rosenstein, something's fishy. Huber, like Rosenstein, Mueller, and a few others, should be the target of an investigation, not conducting them. Why do I keep harping on this Huber thing? Because I keep hearing people, say that, he's going to come up with all this salvation, and that's just not the case. And what he has, or what he will, if anything, produce, it will now be under the direction of John Durham. So Huber's just a name now. He was an empty suit from the very beginning. And that brings up the situation with FBI Director Wray. And I know a lot of you already know this, but I think it's time that we really pinpoint where our problems are. I've called out Wray from the very moment he was appointed, just like I have a lot of others. And it's obvious now that Wray is covering things up to protect the FBI and the wrongdoing, the criminal wrongdoing, well, the criminal things that they've done. And unlike Sean Hannity, which I constantly push on here, this is not a problem with just the upper echelons. Not all the rank and file is bad, but too many of them are. And there was a conversation the other day with it was on Sean Hannity. Or no, it wasn't. It was on Judicial Watch. Chris Farrell and Tom Fitton had some guests on there, one of which was Victoria Tonsing. And she had been there the night when they had on Sean Hannity, as she's been on a number of occasions with her husband Joe DeGenova. And, you know, Hannity was saying on the show, you know, all the 99% are good and all that. And, you know, nobody said anything. I thought that was, they weren't, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. No. There was nobody shaking their head in the affirmative when Hannity said that. I don't know who's telling him to do this. The president, maybe, so that people don't lose total faith in the system. Maybe, or it could be, you know, his family members or friends. I really don't know. But Hannity's making an ass of himself because he keeps pushing that. We're really in a dangerous situation here. As I said, the IC and the deep state are not stepping down off of this thing. They're pushing harder, and they're now subverting things in other ways. They're ready to launch some other things. But at any rate, so on this Judicial Watch show, addressing, she was actually talking about Hannity. I could tell. Victoria Tonsing says, yeah, you know, I mean, these people that keep saying that 99% of the FBI is good, I mean, look at those 10 agents that grabbed Papadopoulos when he got to the airport in the United States looking for the $10,000. The story on that is that they tried to get him to take $10,000 so they could say that, you know, he was working with the Russians and all of that. If you don't know that story, that's basically what it was. Another setup. Well, in the FBI agent's defense, they probably weren't told, hey, you know, this stuff was put on Papadopoulos by our operative in Italy, and you know, go get that, you know, bust him for it. They probably didn't know the ins and outs, and I'll give them that. But the problem is that you never hear them speak up when they realize that something corrupt like that has happened. That's the problem. They're not law enforcement officers if they're not policing themselves. End of story. If they can't police themselves, they don't deserve to carry that badge, that gun, and that title. End of story. So, anyway, that was important to bring up, I think, just because it happened. And Wray is a problem. He's covered. We talked about it a few weeks ago, where he on the official from the Department of State who had an interview with Steele, and that her notes, were hidden by the FBI and deliberetely. So that just shows you, you know, what they're still up to. And now, of course, Wray is slowing down the process on the requests from Tom Fitton and these other guys, even resisting Congress. I think Lindsey Graham, though, is going to take some hide off these people, if not Barr himself. So we'll wait and see. Barr has to realize that Wray is an enemy to everything that he's trying to do. Wray is an enemy, and they're not giving up. That's why I say Barr and the president and Durham and these guys are probably going to need some help. It's serious help. Okay. I know a lot of you folks are saying, well, what about this shooting in Virginia? Why haven't you covered it? Because it's obvious what's going on here. And it's been obvious in all of these things. Think about this. How many major shootings, there have probably been more than I'm going to discuss here, but how many major shootings have happened in Virginia over the last, say, decade? How many? a little more than a decade. Well, there are three major ones now. The first was the Virginia Tech shooting in 2007. Do you remember that? The suspect committed suicide. The next was the Roanoke, Virginia reporter shooting. Allison Parker, who she and her cameraman were shot by a guy who supposedly used to work for the station. That suspect committed suicide too. And at the time, I'm not going to go through it here. I'm just not going to do it. But I did and this was in 2015. I did a complete study on the Virginia Roanoke shooting, and at one part, you see police officers from a distance, probably from a helicopter shot, looking at the scene, what appear to be police officers. And the planks on the deck that they're on are going in a particular direction. But in the pictures of the supposed actual shooting that happened, because you remember that it was the cameraman dropped the camera and you saw this stuff in live time, the planks were going in a different direction. I am relatively certain that part of that was shot on a sound stage, and that the people that are responsible for making sure that this thing looks right didn't get the direction of the planks right, and there were some other problems with that. And I don't want to get into all that, but again, we had that shooting at Roanoke, Virginia, with the purported shooting. And then there have been some anomalies on the Allison Parker boyfriend situation thing too, whether that relationship ever really existed. And I'm not going to go into all that, okay? But there are definitely some problems with that shooting as well. And the suspect committed suicide. Now we have the situation at the Virginia Beach Municipal Building. And I'm not saying that this shooting didn't happen, and I'm not saying the Virginia Tech shooting didn't happen. I'm kind of wondering about the reporter shooting in Roanoke. But this Virginia Beach shooting now, what happens there? The suspect commits suicide. Let me ask you, do you know what intelligence community organization has its headquarters in Virginia? Of course, CIA at Langley. Ladies and gentlemen, I am relatively certain, given the circumstances of this, and the only thing about this last shooting, of course, was that it was a black man, which seems to mess up the deep state narrative that they'd like to push about, white conservatives and all of that. But sometimes you go with what you got if you want to create a story. Fear, concern, justification for Second Amendment violations, all of that. And remember, that's key right now. First and Second Amendment infringement is key right now to the deep state and intelligence community, New World Order takeover, because with those things we can fight back, and they don't want us to be able to do that. So even if this doesn't fit the normal situation that they would like to be promoting, the normal narrative, it still feeds into that. So I think that, it's very possible that these people were somehow involved in the intelligence community, MK Ultra, whatever, to commit suicide if in fact they really did that, and we don't know, of course, but if in fact they did that, that would be typical behavior for somebody who's under the influence of mind control. And yes, they do use that. There are people that poo-poo that, but I guarantee you that that's the case. So I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not going to go into any other detail with it, but just consider that because I think it is an issue. Not that the CIA isn't large enough that they could do this anywhere, but these things in Virginia are very peculiar by and large. I'll take a sip here. The other day, I did an impromptu. It was on Sunday when I saw in Zero Hedge that this transcript of the Dowd General Flynn attorney, Dowd, the White House attorney, and then the attorney for General Flynn, had this conversation, and there was a transcript, and that's all come out now if you've been following that. Probably not on CNN and MSNBC, but the situation is that key information of that transcript, which is a word-for-word transpondence, transcribe of a communication. Key words to that were taken out by Mueller and Wiseman and put into the 440-page report that they submitted. Leaving out those words are just one example of how they're trying to push the impeachment deal, okay? And Wiseman and Mueller have done these things for decades. This is nothing new. The courts should be wary of these two guys and their clowns that they hired, because that's what they do. They alter evidence, and as I called the other day, this should be a crime. This isn't just prosecutorial misconduct in the sense of, they have an immunity. They committed a crime here. This is evidence tampering, and that has to be approached that way. And I've already talked about that. But along those same lines, okay, we still have a problem even with Barr and the DOJ, because the DOJ refused Judge Sullivan's order. Judge Sullivan is, of course, over this case with Flynn. DOJ refused Judge Sullivan's order for the submission of the transcripts on Flynn, the 302s. He wants to check the transcript of what was said by Flynn with the 302s to see if more of this same type of thing has happened. And of course it has. We already know that Pienka and Strzok said that they didn't detect any intent on General Flynn's part to lie. And yet that's what Mueller charged him with. This shows you that they've done this. If they'll do it to a lieutenant general, if they'll do it to the president of the United States, which they did on this thing with Dowd and Flynn's attorney, they're going to do it to us. And I've said this for years, that in fact is what has happened. So these 302s that are coming out will tell us a lot. Wray's trying to stop it, FBI Director Wray. But that just shows what I've continually said, that President Trump is not that he hasn't tried, okay, but he does not have control of his executive branch. They are fighting against him, okay? They're fighting against us. They are the true subversives. They are the true criminals. By the way, they're not all guilty of treason by doing this. It's sedition and it's insurrection and some other felonies and misdemeanors. But as I've long said, there are only going to be probably a handful of people that are guilty, that will be arrested and tried for treason, if Barr even has the courage to do that for them. Hillary certainly won, John Kerry's won, Obama's won, Clapper's won, Brennan's won. At least those five, in what I can see, have committed treason and should be investigated for it and indicted for it. And there may be some others. But they've been trying to undermine President Trump's policies with what is considered our enemies. Now, we're not at war. The technicality thing on treason is that, you aid and abet the enemies that you're at war with. How the courts will look at that under the present situation, I'm not sure. But by and large, most people that are in the coup are not going to be charged with treason or even have approached that, okay? It's just going to be a mere handful, and I've said that for a long time. And then over the entire thing, I really doubt that more than a dozen or 24 people will actually be taken down by Barr and John Durham. That's just how it looks to me at this point. Okay, antitrust is moving forward, finally, against the social media giants. It's about time. As I've said before, I worry this is a little too late. But let's just hope that it'll work. The things that Twitter and Facebook are doing, and even YouTube, I've seen results of that here lately, and they're not backing off. They're not repenting. They're not saying, "Gee, we're sorry." Neither the deep state intelligence community is doing this, as Hillary's an example, and Christopher Wray, right? Example that they're not, even with the threat of being exposed at this point, they're willing to fight and lie and subvert, even when this thing is becoming well known. And unfortunately, a third of the country, I would say, go along with Hillary and Wray and Mueller and Schiff, Adam Schiff, the snake, the pencil neck. Actually, he's a snake. He's still calling for action against the president, which means against us. They are not interested in the truth. They are interested in subverting our country and destroying it. That's what they're about. That's what they were put into place for. And until we, as a people, recognize that that's what is in fact happening, we're not going to fix this, no matter if there's a bar in there or not, because they will continue on one way or another. And you're always going to have problems like this. But at this point in time, we must have a massive response against this subversion and insurrection against us and against our Constitution. So all I can say is just be prepared, just like Colonel Schlichter said. That's all we can do at this point. But hopefully the antitrust moves against these social media giants and against the media itself will be successful. But I think it's going to be a long fight. This isn't going to be something that's going to be fixed probably not even before the election. They'll make some good headway, I think, on it, but it's going to be a tough fight. And that's all I'll say about it. I'm just happy that Trump's finally moving on it. When they took down Paul Joseph Watson and when they said you can't say the name Alex Jones, I think the president finally said, I've ignored this for too long. Yes, this is a problem. So we'll see. Now, I still don't like what he's doing with, the wars and stuff like that, but I think he's trying to keep a lid on it. I hope he's just trying to use a show of force to keep our real enemies in check. But at the same time, that military-industrial complex is hard to deal with. They're the ones that are pushing this, like Hillary Clinton pointing at the soldiers, but never at herself for the crimes that she's committed. You know how I feel about that. Along that same line, to show you that they're still pushing, remember Donna Brazile? Donna Brazile was, involved in Hillary Clinton's campaign, and she took over the DNC after Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down because of the corruption that was exposed on her, a congresswoman. Yeah. So this thing that Donna Brazile came out and she said in her book that she even talked about some problems that she noticed with Hillary and that whole thing. Well, she didn't go down that road for very long. Here just the other day, as I said, these people aren't stopping. Donna Brazile comes out and says, Hillary Clinton lost because of Russian interference. Not because she was a bad candidate, not because she was rejected by the people. Anybody that that rejected Hillary Clinton based upon her acts, they say that the people who did that were influenced by Russia. That is a slap in the face. That is an insult. And as I've said before, if our IC was so weak that they couldn't counter Russian intelligence, or that they were unaware of it, like Obama getting up just prior to the election saying anybody thinks anybody can get in and mess with our elections is just being foolish. It can't happen. And then all of a sudden everybody's saying, oh, yes, it did happen. Obama, why don't people remember Obama saying those things? It's all to put you at ease. It's all to get you to look somewhere else. And Donna Brazile now saying, yes, the Russians were the reason why Hillary lost. They're not backing down, ladies and gentlemen. This is not going well. It's going to end up in a third of our country being against the other 2/3. That's how it's looking. That's biblical. It really is. And you're going to have major, as some people have explained, and the reason and the purpose of electoral college, they're trying to destroy that, which is to make sure that population centers that are liberal and really leftist Marxist, the way it is now, do not overcome the rest of the country. But that's what they're shooting for, and their leftist Marxists are infiltrating our country all across the nation. And of course, the invasion from the south is getting worse, and we've got, of course, the Islamic invasion. I'll just go ahead and say it. And they're trying to force Sharia law, which should be outlawed in this country. I mean, if you want to do it in your family, that's one thing. If you want to institute Sharia law as codified statutes, nope. No Islamic, police patrols and all that. This is getting out of control. Those are unconstitutional, and those things that are happening there. Ilhan Omar says, well, Trump's trying to close the country to Muslims. Yeah, they're enemies. I mean, he's not doing that, but I believe he should because of the circumstances that are involved, unless they say we're going to assimilate. But then you got to be careful because they can lie, and it says so even in the Quran and the Hadith and these other places that they can lie in order to complete the invasion. This is very serious, and we can't treat it with kid gloves and be afraid of people like Ilhan Omar and Tlaib and even Ocasio-Cortez. This is a very serious situation. We have to call it for what it is. How did the Europeans forget history so quick about what happened to them in the medieval times when they were invaded by the Islamic hordes? I don't know how they forget things like that, and what's happening to their daughters primarily. I just don't understand that kind of submission. I really don't. Along those lines, I want to play just a 3-minute clip. It's got to be on my phone, I'm afraid. I'm having a problem with my downloader, so when I take things off the internet, the little clip thing. So I want to play this. Remember, I've said I don't trust the upper echelons of the military. So Headlines with a Voice put this thing out, and it's called, "Is U.S. Military Leadership Loyal to President Trump?" And the other question is, do they stand with Trump? So let me play this for you. I want you to see this because I think it's that important. Hopefully you can see it and hear it both. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure I'm going to be able to see this. Okay, here we go.
With tomorrow's news today, this is Headlines with a Voice.
On Wednesday morning, El Paso sector Border Patrol agents apprehended a historic 1,036 in a single group. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials reported the group included 934 family units. CBP Deputy Commissioner Robert Perez said in a statement that the apprehension demonstrates the severity of the lack of security at the border. It's likely that most of the family units will be released into the interior of the U.S. after processing due to overcrowding. This fiscal year, to date, the El Paso sector alone has arrested over 130,000, compared to over 16,000 during the same time last fiscal year. The numbers continue to rise, and agents see no end in sight for this current situation, El Paso sector officials wrote in a statement. Narrator's note: those are the numbers that are apprehended. Many more successfully enter the country evading detection, and they're coming in the hundreds of thousands from all over the planet. Many bring illnesses, as is reflected in Border Patrol agents calling in sick in record numbers because they're contracting those illnesses, which also puts their families' health at risk. Highway checkpoints in New Mexico have been abandoned for at least a month, maybe more, because the agents are needed to assist in processing the illegals. Agents report that with the wave making their way to the border, the business of smuggling them across the border, the majority being young males, is now more lucrative than the illicit drug trade. A conservative estimate for fiscal year 2019 shows $1.8 billion will be paid to smugglers. That's applying the low figure of $1,500 per head. Some pay as much as $15,000. I don't see a 5% tariff on Mexico's goods. with a guarantee that that number will increase if López Obrador doesn't stem the flow, I don't see that as a solution. We have to ask ourselves what part of asserting his executive power to protect the nation and its people doesn't President Trump understand? Something I've long suspected is beginning to prove itself to be the case. It's likely top military brass isn't behind President Trump. Defense Secretary Shanahan's solution to the crisis, sending cooks and drivers to the border instead of armed forces, couple that with the contempt that military leadership has displayed for Trump. Don't forget, Obama purged the military of an unprecedented amount of patriotic generals and admirals and other top leadership that refused to toe his Marxist agenda line. They were replaced with leftists willing to sell out the country to further their careers.
Remember that face.
Imagine for a moment if President Trump ordered armed forces to the border to defend the country, and then the Obama holdovers told him to pound sand. What then? For Headlines with a Voice, this is Nancy Morgan-Hart.
Okay. Nancy Morgan-Hart is brilliant. She's on top of things, and she's right almost all of the time. Now, I did talk to my Republican insider. Actually, he heard that, and he called me up, and he's very much into understanding the financial aspects, budgets, government, all that stuff about government. And what he said was she is incorrect in saying that the 5% tariff isn't going to have an effect. He's saying that's billions of dollars, Roy. That's a warning shot. That's the beginning, and it can go up as high, President Trump said, to 25%. So in effect, it can be an effective tool. So I want to clear that up. He was saying that she should have done a little bit of math to see how the impact on that in the billions of dollars was really going to make an impact and a statement to Mexico, which is our enemy. Mexico is our enemy. We have to stop pretending it's otherwise, because they are our enemy. It was made that way by our CIA, our aspects of our military, etc. This whole, as I've said, this drug cartel thing from my borders, Mexican drug war or insurgency, this was all to control the government and to do the drug deals, for Mexico being that entity, and to be part of the invasion of the U.S. to destabilize us. That's all planned. Back several years ago, General Petraeus said, America's finished. It's the North American Union. He actually said those words, and they continue to this day, and we have to understand what's happening here. Mexico, the government, is not our friend. It hasn't been for a long time. They even teach in our schools that it's still their land, Azatlan and all that. And that's absolutely ridiculous when you understand Mexican history. It's just baloney. But at any rate, so the 5% tariff is going to make a difference. And if it gets up to 25%, if Mexico doesn't repent of what it's been doing, again, and I'm still finding fault with our military-industrial complex and the IC, the deep state, because they planned this thing. This is how it was planned out a long time ago. We always want to point at the drug use in the United States, but this is all being orchestrated to overthrow the constitutional republic and to make us an authoritarian, subject to authoritarians and tyrants. But at any rate, I will agree, and I think my Republican insider would also agree, that I do believe that Nancy Morgan-Hart is correct in saying that the tariffs alone aren't going to do it. We have to stop that flow now. And people like the Marine Corps commander that you saw there, he's the one that basically called out Trump and said some nasty things about him. I don't know if you remember what happened there, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. But the fact of the matter is, she is absolutely right, and I've been saying it for a very long time, that the military brass cannot be trusted to do what needs to be done. I'm sorry, it's just the fact. Trump should fire all of them and then I know there's some problems with this, okay, but find other officers to take that place. That's a huge responsibility. But if he did it right, it could be done, because these guys are not going to help him. And I'm really afraid of that. That's why I've said it's primarily, if he uses the military, it's primarily going to have to be people 05 and below, 05 lieutenant colonel and commander in the Navy below. I just don't trust the 06s and above. I just don't. So anyway, but I do believe that military response on the border is absolutely necessary. And we need to stop. And of course, they want to keep doing the empire building overseas. The MIC and the military-industrial complex and the technocrats and all that. Of course, that's what they want to do. The technocratic tyranny wants that, because with our military out of here, we're like laying bare. We're like defenseless. And this border situation proves that point. I've noticed that the transmission has had some difficulties. No surprise there. As I said, we're in the Stone Age up here, so I apologize for if this thing has gone down too many times. I imagine the audio continued to be okay, but I know that the video was cutting in and out, and I apologize. Okay. Wow, there's some interesting stuff here in the chat. Let me see if I can bring this up. I have a little problem seeing it. Let's see if I can bring this up here. Yeah, this is going to be a problem here. So we'll be in chat here for a few minutes. I'm having some problems accessing it, so hold on just a second. Let me see if I can find out what's going on here. There was a statement here that I thought was pretty interesting, and this is from Finest Planet 1. Interesting. The same two kings that conspired to kill Jesus are the same two kings that want the true tribe of Israel dead. That means you Christians, wake up, know who your enemies are. That's pretty good, Finest Planet, and yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Okay, let me jump back to the beginning here. Again, welcome everybody as you came in. Heavy chemtrail coverage, yeah. They're all. I mean, all of this rain isn't normal this time of year. Now, climate change is not something that is unnatural, but they definitely are trying to manipulate it so that they can use it against us, and we're going to have food problems. They couldn't plant all the spring crops here, and Iran is having the same problem. So this doesn't look good. Yeah, Hal, the bad guys are still in charge. Trump is not. Seems like a horror movie. Don't expect anything good. Yeah. As hard as Trump is trying, it's like this thing with Ray. It's like this thing with the military commanders, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, etc. They really do want to destroy the Constitutional Republic. They really do want to destroy the perfect law of liberty, because that is the God way. Okay? The perfect law of liberty is the God way. Force is Satan's way. We're in trouble. And like I said, doesn't the scripture, and I know some people don't want to talk about scripture, but it says that the beast made war with the saints and prevailed and wore out the saints of the Most High. How do they wear you out? Keep throwing this stuff. Look. You in the news, you get one piece of information. You can't even process that before they're throwing something else at you. It's mass. It's an attack. It's a massive attack. And they're doing it on all sides. It's a complete encirclement, really, is what it is. Another way to say it is full spectrum dominance. And our spirits have to arise to the occasion to be able to defeat this. I mean, those of you who don't want to talk about religious things, Jesus or whatever, that's fine. I understand that. But there's still a cause and effect. We still have to raise our levels of understanding of right and wrong and being willing to do it. That's one of the things about Barr that I find amazing. And Alex Jones mentioned it yesterday, and that is that Bill Barr, he was asked, doesn't he feel, when he was being interviewed, doesn't he feel bad that his reputation might be at stake, and he might, all the things he's done in his career might be for naught because he's taken this stand? And he said, everybody dies. That's a man that can't be controlled. He will stand up and do the right thing, and we might not agree with it, but in his mind he will do the right thing rather than submit to being pressured and compromised. Like I said, it might not be exactly the way we want. I'm very concerned about him wanting to save the institutions of the DOJ and the FBI as they're presently constructed. He needs to clean those out. And even Victoria Tonsing said that. They need to be cleaned out. They need to be gutted. If you want to keep the institutions, the buildings, the concept, that's fine, but they need to be gutted. Of all the when you have a fire, you gut the inside of a structure. Totally, and you rebuild it, and that's what they need to do. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but that's the way it does. Ronald Richardson says, I heard he died in a shootout with police. Well, I've also seen where it says that he committed suicide in the shootout. He shot himself. He shot an officer. You're talking about the Virginia Beach shooting. He actually shot himself. Yeah, it was during the shootout, but he shot himself. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Denise J. says, don't fool yourself, nanotech and glyphosates are in everything. That's true. That's why I say the chip thing is kind of almost a sideshow. They don't even need chips now. Once this 5G thing is in, they can monitor us all just with the nanotech in us. It's like a fingerprint. How that nanotech is taken into your body and how it maps out. Yeah, they won't even need chips. Loma Linda, Missouri? James Ford, sunny in Loma Linda, Missouri. Wow, okay, good. Yeah, James Hansard says, weather control is helping to fill the swamp again. They're not giving up, ladies and gentlemen, even with the exposure. Look at Mueller, what he did. In his press briefing. It's like I said, they believe they're still going to win. Look at Donna Brazil. They still believe they're going to pull this off, even if it means killing all of us. And they'll do that. Remember how they did it in the Bolsheviks, in Russia, and the communist Maoists. Pol Pot. That's how they operate. And anybody who thinks otherwise, they're lying to themselves. And you can tell who they are because they talk about those authoritarian, tyrannical things. They talk about things like free stuff. They talk about things like free education. They talk about things like, censorship. We can say anything you want, but you don't have the right to counter us, even with logic and reason. That's what they do. Yeah, I agree, David Payson. Defendants should be able to sue if there is malicious prosecution, but the prosecutors have immunity, and I said it went too far. I understand why prosecutors need immunity, but it's gotten to the point where they can commit crimes and not be held accountable. That has to change. That has to change. Let's see. Langley is the CIA training ground. Well, not just that. Thanks, Tony, Blassetti, but in fact, of course, that is their main headquarters too. I'm telling you, the only way, and I will say this until I see something happen otherwise, which I'm not going to. Without a good portion of the military under Trump's control and under Trump's control, but with Barr giving the briefings and the basic objectives and stuff like that, they have got to use the military to raid the FBI, the CIA, the Department of State, some aspects of the Department of Justice, and certainly parts of the DOD. And without that major operation, I don't see this getting fixed, ladies and gentlemen. I don't. Quite the opposite. I think that they're going to be able to turn this thing around on us if we're not careful. Yeah, it is sedition. Stephanie Lee, 81. Yeah, most of the people that have done this, like I said, there are maybe a handful, 5 that are, have done treasonous things. About 5, I'm figuring. Most of the others, and this goes throughout the entire IC, deep state, FBI. A lot of the others are in the position of doing sedition, insurrection, trying to overthrow the elected government of the United States. Those kinds of, and they're going to justify that by saying, well, Trump was an outsider. He's not supporting the government. And when they say that, they mean them. They don't mean the Constitution of the United States. They mean them. That he's not supporting them. And we have to reject that. Oh, what does antitrust have to do with censorship? Well, that's easy. Petros Bonanos. What's happening is that they got their startup from basically IC money. That's where it came from, and they're given all sorts of benefits by the government and those types of things to operate. The way what's happened is they've gotten so big, and now they're buying up a lot. I don't know if you understand what's happening here. They're buying up a lot of other companies. In other words, a lot of companies, not just the control of the social net, but also other companies they're buying, and then they're instituting those same rules in these companies. I don't know if you've seen this in corporations or not. It's really hideous and nefarious. Well, at any rate, the antitrust, by breaking them up, then they can't. Then the collusion that they're doing, real collusion between each other to shut you down. For instance, if you say something on Facebook, then Twitter and they shut you down, Twitter will shut you down too. They're colluding. Okay, they're agreeing. That's all RICO type stuff. That's all trust violations. So they're making trusts is what they're doing. So the threat is, if you censor people, you're violating the First Amendment rights. You are a town square. You can't do this anymore. And if you continue doing it, we're going to bust you up. Oh, they're going to do that anyway, I think. So that's what it has to do with Second Amendment, to do with First Amendment censorship. Yeah, I worry about tinfoil hat. I don't like Bolton or Pompeo. Pompeo was at it again this week. Bolton needs to be fired. I know. This is one of the things about Trump I just can't handle. And I get very upset about that, He just keeps these deep state, neocon, Trotskyite, New World Order support operatives. I just don't get it. And people would say, well, he keeps his enemies closer. Look how they've hindered and almost destroyed his entire agenda and our perfect law of liberty. Look what they've done. No, I'm not happy about that, and I never will be. And there are some other things. All we can do now is say Trump's either going to do it or he isn't. We have to be prepared to go and handle ourselves no matter what the outcome. We can't depend on him as the only thing. I'm not, I've been concerned at some points that he might be a placebo just to kind of put us to sleep. His reactions on some things have certainly not made sense to me. But by the same token, as I said, he's had nobody to support him in what he's trying to do. Very few. So it's still up to us. We're on our own. Okay, we can hope for the best with Trump and what's going to happen here. But you better be prepared for whatever happens either way. Now, Truth and Justice, I heard the CIA is being dismantled. Really? Really? No, that hasn't even started yet. There have been a few people that have left because they knew their butts were hanging out in the wind for what's happened. But no, don't bet on that. No, it's not being dismantled. I don't know who's telling you that. Yeah, tree climbing. Oh, Brennan protected and used Obama's birth certificate against him too, in my opinion. Tree climbing, yeah, that probably is a threat. Obama's a CIA guy anyway. He's been CIA, and his mother was CIA, and his dad was involved in it. I mean, this goes way back. He's a Manchurian candidate. What happened to our Congress that didn't vet Obama the way they're trying to vet Trump? And I mean the Republicans too. Where were the good Republicans like Meadows and Jordan not going after Obama and his birth certificate situation and who he really was and why were all of his records sealed, his college records, his work records, his everything. They didn't do their job then. Now they're on the defensive. Well, I know why they didn't do it against Obama. Oh, he's a black president. Oh, we can't do that. We'll be called racist. Tough luck. You violate the law, I don't care what you are. Our Congress failed us, both the Senate and the House. And, of course, our IC did too. The FBI failed us with Obama. They were all part of it. They were all in on it. And it continues to this day. And it might need to be destroyed. Who knows? Maybe Yellowstone does need to blow up and destroy this entire country. It's a sad thing. I don't want to see it, but I'll tell you what, the corruption and the evil is just what they're doing to kids, killing them in late-term abortions, infanticides after they're born, the child trafficking, the satanic ritual abuse, and yes, it does happen. People say, you don't have any proof of that, because they used the pizza thing that came out, as, they totally blew that out of there. They set up that straw man to make anybody who raises the problem with pedophilia and satanic ritual abuse, the real stuff, make them look like they're crazy. But no, it's real. Oh, this is interesting. Thanks, Chris Carcio. He says, I'm a bit late, so if you already mentioned Alex Jones, Mr. Barnes, and Lee Stranahan called in as Alex Jones called out Q a fraud for the attacks on him as well as misleading people. Yeah, that's true. I've been against Q since, what was that, January of 17? Is it? Yeah. I considered it a possibility, as most of you know, and I covered it to some extent, but I became suspicious in December, actually around Thanksgiving, and so I kind of pulled back a little bit, but by the situation when they said that, this DEF CON 1 thing, I knew that they weren't who they said they were. Q is a fraud. It is. I'm not, but you see, so is CBS, so is CNN, so is MSNBC. If you use Q as a source of information, I'm fine, but if you consider it a God, and I'll tell you what, there are people that really believe it's a prophetic deal. Look at, I'm not going to mention any names, but I was accused of fighting against the prophet Q. So information's fine, but if you start latching onto that thing as the end all, and that, be very careful. That is a cult. It has turned into a cult. Thank you for bringing it up, Chris. Angel Soul says, mostly it looks like action declined for everyone referred to DOJ for prosecution. In the meantime, Trump continues to ask to be invaded. I can't disagree with you, Angel. I can't. The military should be on the border right now. Absolutely. And the DOJ bars allowing them to say action declined on some of the most hideous, nefarious, disgusting, seditious, criminal actions ever, and yet they'll go after ranchers for trying to, one, do backburns to protect their property when the BLM that's the Bureau of Land Management, lets fires get out of control, so the ranchers are backburning to try to protect their property. They'll go after them with false charges, and they'll use trumped up baloney under Agenda 21, now Agenda 2030, to shut ranchers down so they can't use their property, all for the benefits of Harry Reid, Hillary Clinton, etc. Under color of law that they're doing it because of endangered species or some stupid thing about grazing fees. Even if somebody has never signed the BLM contract, they'll still come after them. Yes, I realize that. They'll go after the little people time and time again. And this dual system of justice has been exposed for all to see. It's the best thing Trump has done, actually. But now, if nothing's done to curtail it, their power will get stronger. And that's scary. That's why I say there's only one way to handle this, and it's got to be done by overwhelming mass and force. It's the only way to do it. Even haul these congressmen and senators out in handcuffs for insurrection and sedition. It's just got to be done. The DOJ, same thing. The DOD, the DOS, the Department of State, the CIA. It's got to be done. And Trump can't be anemic about this now. He can't hold back. Once you unsheath that sword, you can't bluff anymore. You can't bluff. Negotiation is impossible at that point. You got to wield that sword and start cutting heads off. Okay, we've been going for an hour and 5 minutes. Michael Goldman, this is very good. The clock is running out for saving our republic. And of course, we've already lost the republic. We're trying to restore it. Ebola breakout initiated. TB. bubonic plague, typhus, typhoid fever, using the illegals as for injecting biological weapons against us. Food is a weapon around the corner. Yes, that's the reason for the floods in the Midwest. Yeah, turn in your weapons for food. You can see this coming. It's all by design. You're absolutely at best 1 year to turn the table on the globalists. I agree, Michael Goldman. We're at that point. I'm not even sure we have a year. Okay. Yeah, Silverbolt, aerial bot, very good. Ray was caught covering for Comey and Hillary, another traitor to add to the list, and I've known that he was from the start. I called out Ray from the beginning. Yeah, unfortunately, cops will close ranks and protect their bad ones, and that's why I say they're not true police officers. They're not true law enforcement. They violate their oath of office. If you're not willing to police your organization, you are as bad as the criminals out on the street. There's nothing wrong with the brotherhood. There's nothing wrong with that. But when somebody does something wrong, you need to call out. Sam Hill, what the hell are you doing? Roy Potter still believes that the illusion we live in is actually the truth. You better operate in the world as you find it, my friend. If you don't, you're gonna. Well, that's all I'll say about that. I don't consider it that what you said is a slam. But, statements like that without any explanation. I know it's kind of difficult on the chat. There's not enough room to explain things. But then don't even go there. My experience is very broad, very deep. I understand things very, very well. Nothing's just black and white. Nothing's just cut and dry. You have to be flexible to some point. And that's all I'll say. Okay. Yeah, James Ford, the traitors have no option but to continue to fight. It shows they're not going to repent. A smart guy, a smart lady would say, you know what, I did the wrong thing. I'll take my licks. It's like Dan Bongino said one day. He tells the FBI, it's over. It's over. Mueller, it's over. Ray, it's over. It's over. Take the L and get fixed. Let's take the L, the loss, admit the loss, but they won't. I think Dan Bongino knows they won't, and he knows what's around the corner, but he's trying to, he was federal law enforcement, Secret Service, so he's trying to convince them, but they're not listening to him. They're not going to do that, and you're right. Hey, Hal, we've been talking about this for almost 3 years, no-hide laws. Yes, and I understand the no-hide laws. I might do a series on that, or at least maybe one video on no-hide laws, because it does change our constitutional republic, and no-hide laws are rabbinic Talmudism. It is not Torah law. It is not. In other words, it's a stake set up by the rabbis, basically to control behavior. And I don't want to get into it here, but yeah, the no-hide laws is what they are, and they really are dangerous in a lot of ways. Yeah, brutal truth again. I'm not going to go there. All great. Okay, it says like my stream cut off again. Stream resumed. Okay, I'm having problems. Obviously, people don't. Somewhere up the line are causing some problems now. This isn't just internal. So let me go. Thanks for coming, everybody. Sorry I didn't get to everyone. Hopefully, one of these days I'll get a good connection and we'll have some good stuff to talk about and won't be interrupted all the time, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and take off. Thanks for being here. Keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground. Situational awareness on high. God bless you. God bless yours. The Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. God bless Donald Trump and all of his righteous endeavors, that he may get the spirit of discernment, know the right from the wrong, and have the courage to do the right thing. Got to go because my stream is having a problem out here.